Hello and welcome to Vault Boys WV. It's me, your card-carrying cryptozoologist, Dave Chaffins, and joining me is my favorite, son of a Mothman, Austin O'Connor. How's it going?
It's going great, man. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. I feel pleased about our guest that we have here today that I've never talked to in my life before. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the man himself. You may know him from such things as Chad the Fallout 76 podcast. You may know him from the Fallout Hub. You may know him from a strange baloney video from back in the day. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Kenneth Vigue.
You weren't supposed to share that video, Dave.
This is.
I trusted you.
This is out there. It's out there.
How are you?
I think we're doing well. I think we're doing well.
There is no bloody.
I need to know about this.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. No. Yeah, my week's been going well. I've been doing a lot of yard work. It's so nice, beautiful weather. It's gonna rain though soon. You know, everyone's favorite podcast discussion topic is the weather. You know, everybody loves hearing about the weather because it's all relevant to exactly where you are. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, here I feel like we just skipped over the end of winter and just like went straight. Like it was like full spring. Like normally there's a little transition, but it's just been like 70 degrees every day.
Yeah, here it's been in the 60s, so everything's melting pretty quickly, which I'm pretty happy about. I was done. I was so done with winter.
Yeah, pandemic added into it. I was about to go crazy.
Yeah, I imagine up where you're at, the first snow, you're like, oh, that's fun. The second one, you're like, okay. And then once you get to the third one and on and on and on, you're like, I'm good. I'm very good.
It's the ice storms. I like how we're continuing to talk about the weather. But this particular winter, I think it's just extended periods indoors. Every time it would snow, I would literally stand at the window and then scream obscenities. Like I was visibly angry. And the plow truck guy will sit around the corner. He does it on purpose. He waits. That bastard sits right around the corner of the street. He sees me pedal on inside. He's like, oh, here we go. And then he'll just shove everything right into the end of the driveway where I just snowblowed. So I go out and I clean it up. And then he comes back the other way and for some reason veers off into the left side of the road.
So where you are... Oh, you can go ahead, Dave.
No, you can go ahead. I love you so much. Go ahead.
Where you are, Ken, like what's the earliest, when do you normally get the first snow of the year?
Usually mid-November.
Okay, so fairly early.
Sometimes it's earlier because I'm up in the mountains of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So winter will sometimes start earlier. And then other years, like we had a Christmas that was a few years ago where it was 80 out. I was like, okay,
that's strange.
This is weird.
Do you swear by a snowplow, or are you like a shoveler? What's the snow gear? Do you have like those old school tennis racket snowshoes that you put on? Like what's the setup?
I have a dog sled team that I keep tied to the porch railing, and I usually will do that. One of them is a big husky, and he has like this keg of whiskey just in case I freeze out there in a snowbank.
Yeah.
That's pretty handy up here.
What's their names? You know, you've got to name them all. You know, I assume that there's one name, and then maybe you go in like, you know, you're Gym 1, Gym 2, Gym 3, because I mean that's a pack.
Yeah, I started with Biff and Jessica, and then I just went straight to punctuation.
Okay. Yeah. Colon. Get over here. Semicolon. The smaller one, you know, get over here.
Exclamation point, though. He's always hyped.
Question mark?
I really do love how Dave was like, everyone wants to hear about the weather. And we really did just run with it there.
We did.
I love that. I just love that for us.
We did. We 100% ran for it all. What about you guys? How's your weeks going? How is your situation? What's your life status? Give me an update. Think it's Facebook in 2013. Give me like Kenneth Vigue is like eating some broccoli. What's the update?
Right now?
Just this week, you know. Summarize it. I wanted to be like this is like your video diary. Don't call it a vlog. This is a video diary.
Appalachia, day 36. That's where it all began. I'm having a productive week. That's something.
That's good. That's good.
I'm quite busy.
What about you, a dog?
Man, just so much going on in my life.
Yeah.
Actually, there's nothing going on in my life.
Yeah.
Just I'm kind of with Ken. It's been like a quiet week for once. I don't know. It's like I feel like the weather got warm and everybody else has things going on now, and I feel like I've been able to like get my own stuff done for once. I don't know. It's been nice. It's been like it's like the calm before the storm. I feel like it's been too quiet this week.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think it has. I think it has been pretty quiet. Just to denote, our special guest today, Kenneth Vigue, has kind of got his start a few years ago in the podcasting game, doing a scripted Fallout 76 based podcast where he writes original stories using some of the lore, characters, etc. from the game. And I won't say that he's like produced it, but he's extremely produced. He has produced it out to like the first time I heard this, I was like, this doesn't sound like it was made by one person. It sounds like that It was like went through a studio and you had all of these, like you had all the bigwigs in there sitting down trying to figure. It's truly amazing.
Dave, I keep this curtain closed because there are people that are paid in beans and with shoes. There's a whole team of them that I brought over here from a mysterious village in a jungle somewhere. And they're the entire production team.
It seems like that you have a lot of like employees in your service because you have this team from the jungle and you've got your huskies. And it's like, I guess, that's where all the dog food goes is to them. But all of the beans, I mean, how do you get any protein in that house if you're giving all your beans and shoes away,
I have to keep some of the production secrets secret.
Okay.
But it sounds like you have an answer for everything. Like you have a solution for everything.
That's the wonder of imagination.
For being malnourished, I feel like they produce well, though. I feel like the production value is just through the roof.
Yeah, I find if you play Christmas music 365 days a year, it can build them up into kind of a frenzy where they're just on the edge of insanity, enough to create some of our best work yet.
I love it. This is like you should change your website to all of this information that you've given have been like behind the scenes, now we pull back the curtain and here is, little Jimmy Two Shoes working at the counter. Here, little Jimmy Two Shoes, a bean for you, sir. And you like place it down. They're so thankful.
This house has a sister and they're all down there.
So I've kind of pitched the show. I'm not sure how we got to this level of pitching, but Ken kind of add on to that. What all is Chat of Fallout 76 podcast?
We are a dark comedy that is heavily centered around the meta of Fallout 76. When it originally started, it was just some short, random journal entries that accompanied some hilarious glitch photos of, people hovering in the air. There was one where a scorched head would elongate that allowed you to stand behind it for some hilarious photos. So all of these kind of weird, kind of glitchy things that were just really funny became fodder for writing. So I would take a picture and I would think, can you imagine if somebody was experiencing this in the first person? Like they emerge out into the world to try and rebuild civilization. And, they see somebody floating down the street in a seated position or, someone with a scorched midsection head thing. All of these kind of weird things. And it became about these two characters, Chad and Simon, who one is this typical kind of sad sack where everything is really half empty. And then the other one is Chad, who's a traditional jock type, who, when you first meet him, you're hearing everything from Simon's perspective. So you're hearing exactly what the stereotypical Chad you imagine would be, which is this kind of jock bro type, um, who just seems to enjoy everything. Everything is fairly easy. Like Chad doesn't really encounter any major issues in the world in the same way that Simon is constantly tortured by every minor inconvenience. Um, and it started out just me reading those stories, but by episode 3, I had two concerns. One is I was worried that over time people get tired of just hearing my voice, uh, and two, uh, I wanted to tell bigger stories, but I was limited by being able to do so, because it felt very audiobookish.
Hmm.
So I did a casting call, on the Fallout 76 forums, on Facebook and then Reddit, and started with a full cast. And episode 4 is kind of a soft reboot of the show. It's when the show kind of came into its modern iteration, which is a full cast dark comedy radio drama. It's kind of a weird composite between a little bit of South Park with Monty Python, as if it made love to a sweet, beautiful old, uh, you know, radio playing 1940s kind of radio dramas.
I love that descriptiveness of that. That really
Yeah.
painted the picture in my head right there.
Yeah.
It's a weird, yeah, we're a weird composite. And over time has gone on. Some of our episodes have become more dramatic or serious in tones as others, particularly going into season 2, where the stakes are a lot higher. Um, some of the Bethesda employees, Pete Hines, Lady Devon, who's a community manager, and Ferret Bowden, who's, um, one of their lead writers for Fallout 76, are joining the cast for very particular characters. Um, they're going to be dealing with some of the more serious, elements of the show that are dealing with one very big question, which is death. If suspended, if death has no consequence, what would you do? How would you act? Um,
Hmm.
the characters become more casual, doling out death and violence because it doesn't mean anything. And because of that level of, um, disregard for life, it dramatically affects the characters in different ways, leading up to what ultimately will be a conflict at the end of this season that will see the battle for Appalachia.
Yeah. The idea, and it's interesting to go back and listen to some of season 1. I ended up binging all of season 1 on a drive that I took from Charleston up to Philly. And my favorite like recurring thing is their experience with death, and how they're all like joking about, oh, I'm just gonna die and I'm gonna respawn and it's gonna be fine, because that's an in-game mechanic. And it's like almost taking that and saying, okay, now that's a core part of the story. I thought that was really funny, and it made for interesting content of not only like, the things that you would expect from a Fallout narrative is like, how are we gonna survive in a post-apocalyptic world, but it's like really that, but also what the heck is going on? Why can we just sometimes respawn randomly? Like, I feel like that's a really creative idea.
Thank you. Yeah, it's, one of the questions that we will be answering this season is what the hell is going on? Why is it that vault dwellers exclusively have this state by which they completely are resurrected, healed, renewed? Um, so I had to introduce the concept of the atomic shop, um, which I did. So in between the state of life and death, so before a person is resurrected, they find themselves in this purgatory state, which is the atomic shop. And it is kind of this nightmarish hellscape of endless aisles of merchandise, and these whispering voices. it's kind of a terrifying place. In order to get out of that place, you have to pay a price, which in this case is quite literally blood. When you're reborn, for the first few times around, you don't remember any of that. But each time you come back, you're essentially a copy of a copy. You're a copy of yourself, where there's a little bit less of you, and you start seeing weird things in the world. It distorts your perception. So a lot of the glitch mechanics that we see in the game, I'm explaining away as um, the mania or the slow losing of insanity from dying, getting tortured in this place for an extended period of time, but coming back almost instantly. Time moves differently in the atomic shop than it does in the real world.
Like that, the idea of connecting all of these things, I think is really really fun and interesting. And I don't think that you really you see maybe an exploration of one kind of mechanic like that, like in the seminal Tom Cruise film Live Die Repeat, like the idea of respawn, also called, what was the other name for that movie? It had Emily Blunt in it, and she was like tearing up some people. Does anybody know? Nobody? Bueller?
I can't tell you. Can't tell you.
Well, essentially Tom Cruise like keeps on dying to these aliens, and then every time he dies, he just like wakes up at the beginning of the day.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I had for some reason completely blocked that from my memory.
Is it
Actually,
Vanilla Sky?
No.
No, that's a different one. Yeah.
No, it wasn't Iron Sky either.
It was like, yeah, it was very, what was that?
I mean, it was an action sci-fi film, but essentially he had gotten infected with this thing where every day when he died, he would just reset the loop. And so he started as like somebody that was really terrible. Like he didn't know how to fight. He wasn't supposed to be in the battlefield, but like by all the different iterations, he's like memorized all of the different
Edge of Tomorrow, they're saying?
Yeah, Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
They renamed it Live Die Repeat, which is kind of stupid. Why? They officially renamed that movie Live Die Repeat, which is weird.
That's odd.
Yeah.
Huh.
That is weird.
But
yeah, that idea of just resurrection, I love that you have toyed with that. So like when you're writing these out, like how far in advance normally do you have like an idea, like where you're going from the beginning? Do you just kind of find your way there? Like what's your writing process like?
I started with the arc. So way back when I sat down and started writing episode 4 to introduce all the characters, I figured out what the arc over 4 seasons would be. So I had a 4-season plan for specifically what I wanted to do. And usually each season I'll sit down and come up with, I work backwards from that. So last season was all about the characters making their way in this world and trying to understand how to survive and connect with one another, and the tease of a mystery. But also it ended with them being put on trial, which was the stage show that we did at Bethesda Game Days in Boston. After the trial, everything kind of changed. You know, the overseer comes back after being arrested and imprisoned for serial killing as the Sickle Man. And then going into this season, I knew where we were going to end this season with the battle, where you have on one side, you have people fighting to restore death as a state by destroying something that is causing it to not be so. So you get teased with a little bit of that. And then on the other side, you have people who recognize that in a survival situation, this is the ultimate insurance policy. The world is incredibly dangerous. So for a permanent death to be reinstated, particularly if you're like Chad, you have a lot to lose. His relationship with Susie develops where he's become more of a father figure to her, which over time has really changed people's perception about who Chad is and who Simon is. You eventually find out that Simon is the ultimate false protagonist, where he is in fact a villain, and Chad, even though he's really that gang dwells in a really morally gray area because they steal from people and they kill people with
Mhm.
trap camps and things like that, and yet they're honest about who they are and what they're about, and they very much care for each other, particularly Chad caring very much for Susie and filling that void of a father figure after she lost hers. um, so he doesn't want death to be returned. um, yeah, I kind of outline all of that and then work backwards. But the
Okay.
script I usually write probably a month before we start actually production of it.
Cool. I was thinking about, like, when I listen, I always just wonder like how much of it, you go into already knowing this is going to play into this, going to play into this, or if you just, yeah. So thank you.
Most
That
of
clears
it's
that up.
most of it's up here.
Yeah.
Well, it's been very successful. I mean, kudos to you on really, you and your cast and the other people that are, helping out with the writing and production. You just got a composer, all the people that have kind of done all that stuff.
Caden is amazing. We're so lucky to have him.
Yeah. But that's one of your ideas. In our next segment today, I want to know from each of you what a $1 million idea is. Now, this can be you essentially have $1 million, you execute this idea, and ideally you're going to make that back. Ideally. All right? So, as everybody had ample time to think about this, I'm not springing it on anybody. I've come prepared today. There's going to be no surprises. I don't have anything up my sleeve. I have very short sleeves. Be very little up those sleeves. Does everybody feel good about it?
I feel okay.
Okay. All right, then we'll start with you. A dog. I'm just gonna stick with
dog.
that. A dog. DAWG.
$1 million idea.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking today because I was texting you and I was like, "What's $1 million? Like, what am I gonna come up with?"
Mm-hmm.
And I determined I was eating lunch at that time. Every time I eat like potato chips or any sort of chip or Cheetos, whatever, there's always so the dust, like the crumbs are on your fingers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why have we not figured out a substitute, something in the food to where like that's not going to stick to your finger? You know what I mean? Because then like half the time I'm working, I'm on my computer, I'm like snacking, or I'm playing video games, maybe eating some chips, and then you got to clean your hands off or you get it all over everything. And then like furthermore, if I have some money left over after we figured out how to not have the crumbs, like, why are bags not clear? I want to see what I'm getting in these products. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Like, because like sometimes these bags may have been dropped, that like you get the little broken chips nobody likes. Like, I want like some girth in my chips. You know what I mean? Like, I want something, like I want to make sure I'm not getting like a little like sun chip that's broken into 4 pieces.
You want a chip that you're gonna put in your mouth and it's gonna scrape the corners of your mouth, and you got to go get a napkin. Like,
yeah, I want a
serious chip.
I already accept the fact that like half the bag is going to be air. Like, I get that. I can compromise. We don't have to change anything about that. But just give me a clear bag so I can see. Like Tostitos, they kind of almost have it, because there's like some you can kind of like some of the bags you can kind of see into.
Yes.
And like a lot of off-brand, like nachos, like those type of chips, like sort of. But it's like, like Sun Chips, Ruffles, like let's talk, let's get something. And I don't know, I just think that would be, I'd have even more money left over after that. I could throw that at Cinnamon Toast Crunch and help them with their problems right now.
They're having a lot of problems. Yeah. They have a lot of sugar apparently in that in their cereals. Yeah.
In my day, when there was a prize in the box, we didn't complain. I don't know what the issue is.
I had all sorts of shrimp.
If I could have shrimp cocktail in my breakfast cereal, I mean, that'd be pretty sweet.
That sounds like a New England thing of like going to buy a box of cereal and it's like, oh, here's some fish products that just happen to fall in as well.
All right, mussels in a white wine sauce, kick ass. Just kind of thrown in there. A Tupperware container with the name Judy on top of it and tape.
Oh my god!
But yeah, that's my idea. Those are my ideas. That's all I got today.
ethical chip dispersion. I like it.
Just be honest with the people, you know? Just let us know what we're getting.
Mm-hmm. I like it. What about you, Ken?
All right, so hear me out.
Okay.
West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
What is their number one most popular product?
Pepperoni rolls? Or coal?
Coal? I would say coal. Or pepper.
Both of you are wrong. It is, in fact, the statue of the Mothman.
Oh,
Okay.
true. Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
People
Fair
travel
enough.
from all over, and when they stand in front of that Mothman, they all do the very same thing. Do they take a picture of the front? Oh no. Do they take a picture of the head? No. They take a picture of that sweet, sweet stainless steel backside.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So-
he is double cheeked up. Thank you for
So
noticing.
hear me out. Picture that backside on your desk at the office, on a table at home, maybe by the door to greet guests, split right down the middle to collect envelopes, your bills, maybe outgoing mail, the ultimate mail slot.
Can you speak in my language? This needs to happen. This is the best $1 million idea we've had on this show, and I'll listen. I'll invest in this idea. I'll be a part of this.
Well, I mean, you
This
can only
holiday
invest by
season,
mail.
gift
That's
that
the.
keeps on giving. Mothman's ass.
He is caked up. I'm telling you. I don't know what I just picture the person that made that sculpture was just like, I'm about to do it. I'm about to do it, and just double cheeked up. I need that on my desk.
Just like he looks like the character from the Aerosmith album cover, just like a nice chrome person, just like I mean,
If you look really close, you can see like the infinity symbol in it. Like there's some fierce symmetry there. Like
Yeah.
the secrets of the universe are locked inside the perfect fold and shape of that posterior.
I gotta make a drive to Point Pleasant this weekend. I'm gonna have to go.
yeah, I think getting that out into the I mean, what a conversation piece, you know? Like what you know?
Yeah.
You'd have to talk about it. You'd have to say something about it, and then
I mean,
it becomes.
It could open up like could you imagine that becoming the staple 5th anniversary gift? And like you could have small ones mounted to rings. Like
Oh, that would be cool.
I went to Point Pleasant instead of I went to Jared. She just kind of holds it up.
Yeah.
It's like there, just kind of glistening. You could probably put a rock in the middle of it. Nice diamond, maybe, a couple carats.
Yeah.
That would be
That would be beautiful.
just like how like Myrtle Beach has like wings, like those stores with like the towels and all the novelties. Like we
Yes.
need to get one of those in Point Pleasant, and it's just like different variations of Mothman's ass, just like stainless steel, just whatever you want it on, we got it. Like this is
Right.
Oh man.
Like, you know how small businesses have like the e-chip readers, just like, refashion that.
Yeah.
There you go.
know, put your Discover card
Slide
in
it right
that
through.
and see what you find,
What's in your
Oh.
wallet?
Oh,
Mothman's
Whoa.
stainless steel ass, baby. Oh,
I wonder
Man.
what is that made of? Is it stainless steel? Like what do we know about the construction of that? What do we actually know about the Mothman? Like the physical material of the Mothman? Like it could be some
Yeah.
like otherworldly stuff. It could be like some weird stuff.
I feel like there's like two. So like my life was just changed to where like when I reference something, it's going to be like pre Ken bringing this idea into my head, and then like post, because that's just that's gold. I am just that turned my whole day around that you just brought that up.
Wow.
Well, that's all the time we have this week. That's right.
Wow. I don't even know how I can follow that, but my idea was grappling hooks. Grappling hooks are kind of cool. I was watching the Justice League movie, which turned out to be kind of a lot of it was boring, a lot of it was okay, a lot of it, well, I mean, some of it was pretty good, but a lot of it was like let's watch a music video, and it's like MTV isn't around for a reason. Like, there's, nobody wants to watch that on the theater. We'll go to YouTube and watch the music videos. Anyways, Batman was using his grappling hook, and I was thinking to myself, why aren't like regular people using grappling hooks all the time? Like as like okay, I need to go up to the third floor, but the stairs, too hard. But if you had a good enough, I mean, he's got that grappling hook that's just like in his hand, and if he shot that, and he can like, click the little button and pull himself that away. I mean, that to me seems like a marketable product,
Yeah.
Like you go to the stadium for a football game and you're like, oh man, I'm row, ZZ seat 3. You can just like grappling hook, get right up there.
So did you do any research? Like, are there any actual real life like prototypes that have been created, or is that just the...
Did I do any research? What do I look like, Bruce Wayne? What do I look like, Elon Musk? Huh? Elon Musk. It's like, I made a flamethrower, and it's like, it's not even a real flamethrower. He's like, haha, I made it, and I'm like, you should like watch old Vietnam War documentaries. Those are flamethrowers. What you made, sir, is a Bunsen burner. You made a Bunsen burner, and it just looks like a stormtrooper gun. That's it.
I would be willing to pay like a full paycheck to watch you try to grapple hook from your backyard up to your roof, just like to watch that happen.
Okay.
Fellas, we're thinking very small scale here. We're going to need a flatbed truck, a grappling hook, and a trip to Point Pleasant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Keep driving. Just keep driving. Don't even slow down.
We got Dave hanging out the back window, just ready to shoot.
I need one of those. I need like a chrome,
Drive, Austin, drive.
like full body suit. I need like a chrome full body suit. Like some people go to the football games or whatever and have like the sleek suit or whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking about? Have one of those and then like get onto the bridge and then like grapple up to the top of the bridge and like stand up there and look all chrome. I'd have to make sure that my butt was good enough to model. For
you're blowing our cover. We got to be inconspicuous with this.
Yeah, I think if Dave dresses as the Mothman and stands in that same kind of weird check out my ass pose that he's doing there, he could give us enough time to get away and then like mysteriously disappear. People would be like, oh, hey, there's the Mothman who really is just Dave.
Yeah.
Trying to...
I can see the resemblance a little bit.
Or like try to Indiana Jones it and steal the Mothman statue, so that we can get because we obviously need like prototype specs if we're going to get this Mothman's butt situation, and then I can stand in for the amount of time that we take it back to our scanners.
I'll
I
scope
can do
out
a
the
reasonable
dimensions.
facsimile with like paper towel rolls and maybe some Elmer's glue with elbow macaroni. I think a mixture of those things. I think I could pretty much get the exact look.
Here, I'll do a pose and I'll see if it works. All right, this is great podcast quality content. Is that
everyone watch?
Everyone watch? Everyone watch. Pull your cars over the side of the road, wreck them in a ditch, and look at my Mothman pose. That's really terrible.
I'll describe it for our at-home viewers as if I was at a golf match. Dave right now is having a stroke.
Oh boy. Well, I think those are. I mean, I think that we've come up with some genius level thinking today, and I really think that we should just act on everything. I think collectively we should just act on all this. But when I asked you, I said, "Hey, Kenneth Vigue, I like to use your full name. Do you want to come on the podcast?" And you were like, "Yeah, of course I'll come on, man." And then I remember you talking to me about some like really strange stuff back in the day, about stories that your grandmother told you about like giant lobsters and like some strange old things. And I was thinking to myself, now this very day, this very Wednesday would be a perfect time to bring you on to kind of talk about your weird experiences over the course of your lifetime. I mean, from the paranormal end, I'm sure everybody, outside of your bean counting fellows behind the curtain and your, series of huskies, but some interesting weirdness going on.
Yeah, it's funny because I was reminiscing about this week. My family on my father's side is French Canadian, and every summer my grandmother Our ancestral family home was on an island off the coast of New Brunswick. It had exactly like 558 people on it. It was just this lobster fishing village, and it is about as far northeast as you can possibly go in North America.
Mm.
So summer lasts like a week. Um, but as soon as school would let out, my grandmother would pick my brother and I up from school, and she'd already have the car packed, and off we'd go. Um, and I just remember being that young; it would take forever to get there. And then we finally would open the house for the summer, and we just spend all of the summers there. There was no TV or anything. Eventually, later on, we got a VCR, but particularly when I was young, it was just like every night was my grandmother playing cards. She'd play solitaire, and I'd tend the fireplace in the wood stove, um, and then we just listened to CBC radio. And even then, this was like the mid to late '80s. They were still playing these old school radio plays. Um, so that was pretty much every night. And you wake up in the morning, and it's 12 acres right on the ocean. So you just wander the woods and the bogs, and the beaches, which are pretty much empty. And the island itself had so much folklore. Um, People would come over to the house and visit all the time. It's a very it's an odd thing when you live in the country or in an island community because everyone knows each other.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, without even knocking, people will just walk in and like come over for a cup of tea. Um, they wouldn't call or anything. People just kind of show up, and then people tell stories. So particularly on a few times a summer, there would be like one night towards the end of the summer where all of the my grandmother's friends that she grew up with, the old crowd, would come over, and then they would just sit around the wood stove telling these stories. Um, and when I was younger, I used to sleep on the cot next to the wood stove. That was kind of my spot. But when you're a little kid, you're kind of out in the open. You're supposed to be sleeping, but you're facing the wall and you're listening to all of these stories, um, about monsters and witches, and pirate treasure, that they're telling each other, and I would never sleep awake. But you never forget these stories.
Yeah,
A
you
few
don't.
of the
You would never forget the stories. No.
there was a few of the more uh, terrifying ones, one of which I experienced was the ghost car. Um, in order to describe it, so where our house was on a peninsula with maybe a dozen houses. So once you're on the island, you would turn off down the side road, and you would drive for 25 minutes on this dirt road over peat bog before you finally get to the beach and where we were, which was more of the English speaking side of the island. Um, and that road was incredibly old. It was one of the oldest roads on the island. And at some point in the 1930s, there was a visiting priest to the island whose car broke down on what we call the $1 million hole. It's this sharp turn on the peat moss. And on either side, because of the amount of snow they get there, the ditches are literally deadly. They're 6 feet ditches. So if you come tearing around that corner, you are going to eat the corner.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people have gotten into accidents and died there over the years. So the priest was out in the road, fixing his tire, and around comes this car speeding, hits him, flings his body off into the bog, um, and then the car off to the side. And it took them a while to find him because the bog is surrounded on both sides by this weird kind of boggy quicksand. So if you can imagine, um, like 5 to 10 feet of fresh water over which is a layer of this vegetation, you don't know when you're walking on it that you're actually walking on something that you could drown in, or if it's mixed with some of the peat, it becomes very quicksand like. So even my great great grandfather would lose a lot of cattle out there. They'd kind of wander out and then they'd just drown in this quicksand.
Huh.
So it took them a while to find the body, but ever after that, there would be this car spotted on the road, and it's a narrow road. There's no way to turn off it, but the car would be behind you. You would see the taillights, it would be racing, and then you would get to this point where the Barrens ended and Wilson's Point began, and it would just be gone. Like the car would just disappear.
I don't like that.
I remember it was the night. God, this is whenever Michael Jackson's Thriller came out. Whenever that was, it was such a big deal that we went to the center of the island to watch it in the village hall. So it's just a bunch of us kids and older people sitting around watching Michael Jackson's Thriller. So we watched it that night and went to a party at the neighbor's house right next door. And afterward, piled into the car and we're on our way home across the Barrens. And it still freaks me out to this day. When you're little and you're coming home late from a party, you get into this tired state. And, your parents are tying quietly in the front of the car. And, there's like the Beatles on the radio. And it is this weird kind of you've never felt more comfortable and present in your entire life. And I remember feeling that way. And then I remember my father saying, "Look at this son of a bitch." And these bright headlights reflecting off the mirror. So, my father was speeding up, and then this car would speed up. And then my father is prone to angry outbursts. So then my father jacked on his brakes. And then the car did the same. So finally, I remember my mother getting freaked out and saying, "Please slow down." We get to the end of the Barrens Road. And to be clear, it's a straight shot. Like there's not even a turn. So we got to the point road where the Barrens ended, Wilson's Point began. He slammed on the brakes, got out of the car, and there was nothing there. Like at all.
Whoa. That's freaky.
So yeah, I never forgot that one. So that was the ghost car.
See that like any story like that involves a car for some reason freaks me out even more, I think, because it's like I think in like if you're in a house and there's a ghost, or if you're in an enclosed space, it's like just leave and you're out of it. But like in that situation, it's like you can't. It's
There's
almost
nowhere
like you can't escape it.
You're on a narrow dirt road, and there are 6-foot ditches on either side.
Yeah.
You'd have to do like an 8-point turn if you ever had to like reverse. It was that tight a road.
Right. And you're most likely out in the country. You're trying to go somewhere. So there's already that added anxiety of I probably need to get home because it's dark. We're in the if you're driving down a country road, it is not like, oh, it's dark in the city. It is dark as you'll get out.
On a night without a moon out there where there's no light pollution, you are on the other side of the moon. You have never experienced a dark of night than you do when you're in the goddamn country and there's no moon. Like, no.
I mean, it sounds like, and the way you explained the island, like it sounds so like picturesque, but like it sounds like a movie. Like you get this like just pleasant island, and then this just like horrifying stretch of road that is just claiming lives or something. Like it's just very like the way you said, like I could like imagine all of it though, and I think that's why I'm even more terrified.
I've wanted to do a podcast about the island there in some fashion for a while, because I've never experienced or seen a place like that, much less heard stories. And the people there are so down to earth, to the point that when things like tragedy strikes, like there have been, because it's a fishing village, there have been boats out in terrible storms out in the Gulf, and it's complete loss of life with bodies washing ashore. I was 6, and I was on my four-wheeler when we came across the body of a fisherman that was the mayor of Lamech that had gone scuba diving and just kind of washed up. Um,
Wow.
and these things kind of happen, so you have this weird juxtaposition of great beauty and also this rawness to it. There was no bridge going to the island, so you had to take a ferry boat, which was, as a kid, is amazing. You get out and you're in the front of the boat, and sometimes we would see seals swimming alongside, particularly later in the year. And we called it crossing over if we were going to go to the island. I'm not like, we'd call the process crossing over,
Yeah.
and everyone there would be like, "Are you crossing over today?" And my grandmother's like, "Probably." So it would be an expedition to go for groceries where you'd cross
Yeah.
over, so you'd have to shop for a week and then come
Yeah.
back, and then you'd have to wait in line for the ferry boat. But in the wintertime, no ferry boat, so you'd have to drive your car across the Atlantic Ocean to go from the island to the next. And because of that, particularly in blizzards, a number of people lost their lives by making the mistake of driving out to sea or the car going through the ice.
Wow. So it was just like almost every man for themselves in the winter. Like
Yeah,
you have to make that trip. There's a risk. You just accept that.
it's wild. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's so interesting though, that's just the way it was there. Were there people that would just stock up and just stay the whole winter, not even try to?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like, we're summer folks. It was, our experience there is kind of a joke. We'd go, to the next island over and come back with 3 cases of ramen noodles, and we'd be good for the most part.
Yeah.
Everyone else there, I mean, it's old school pioneer living. Not only is Achy Breaky Heart still being danced in the late 90s, but people, hunt moose, deer, they'd preserve, they'd have massive freezers, and everything canned, and 5 cords of wood, the ability to sustain themselves for an extended period of time, particularly in the winter there, because you can't really drive across the barrens if the road is closed. So people have to be prepared for 2 weeks with the road being closed.
Wow.
And when I watched, Stephen King did Storm of the Century, and the way in which they were locked in that island community, I think that's the closest I've ever seen to kind of the experience of what life is like there.
Well, that was what I was going to say. The way you explained it made me think of a Stephen King novel almost, just like the kind of the vibe of this like northeastern, like just ocean village, fishing town, like something, I don't know. It's just, yeah, it's like beautiful but ominous all at the same time.
There's also the story of the Goo Goo, which is kind of a hilarious name, but it's
all of these things are named hilarious things, like the Momo, and I'm like, the Momo
Like
sounds like
yeah.
it sounds like something that you would find in like a as a Japanese mascot of a town. Welcome, Momo. Momo's here, buddy. Hi, Momo. How you doing?
Or a little dumpling.
Yeah.
A little bit of a dumpling. Someone thought, that's a dumpling, and you know what? That kind of looks like the cryptid. Let's call it a Momo.
I love it. Love it. So what is this? What is this creature thing?
So the Goo Goo has kind of an interesting backstory. The island itself has a really rich history, dating back to the 1500s, when I think it was 1598 is when the first Jesuit priests opened a mission there. And particularly at that point in history, the island was one of the most coveted places as part of trade between Canada and England. A naval battle was fought right off the coast. But fur trade and all of that was a huge deal there. The legend was that one of the priests had pursued and raped an Indian girl, a Micmac Indian girl, and then killed her to hide his crime. And forever after that, this witch covered in seaweed, um, in this tattered dress, would emerge from the ocean and kind of like a siren, um, draw men into the deep, because the island is on top of everything else, surrounded, um, by a shelf. So you're walking out and it's like ankle deep. And then there's a very steep drop off, like down 20, 30, 50 feet surrounding the island,
Wow.
with severe undertows. So even when we were kids, we had to be very careful about how far out
Yeah.
we walked. But so she supposedly would drag people out to drown in their death. But it became such, a local figure that in the summers we would have a few different festivals, one of which would be the Goo Festival, which would be this massive bonfire. So, kind of like the Wicker Man, they would make the Goo figure and part of a bonfire. And then there would be drinking and music, and this, they'd burn the Goo and banish her back. It became like this whole thing. Um, the island had weird traditions like that, like a tuna festival, the Festival du Thon. They had, yeah, it was a celebration of the tuna, where they would have a tuna king, a tuna queen, and one year I was the tuna prince.
Are you serious? We booked the Tuna Prince?
I was.
This
that
is
was
big.
Me.
This
That
is
was
big.
me.
This is a big. This is a big. Like, listen,
feel like-
you've got to make edits to your website. You have to make
This
edits
needs to
to
be
your Twitter
everywhere.
bio. Like, you have to be. Like, you have to introduce yourself. Be like, "Hello, my name is Kin. I'm the Prince of Tuna."
My life went downhill after I lost the crown. I was never the same after that.
I wish we could like put in just like a little graphic right now on the stream, just like under
Just a
you, just
crown.
Tuna
Yeah, just
Prince,
like a-
just like that, the crown.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Oh wow.
Wow.
The more I hear about this island though, I very much need you to write and just put this out into the world. Like
I
we need more.
really want to, because it had also the people there are
Yeah.
just the wildest characters you'll ever meet.
Oh, I'm sure. I am sure.
Just very strange, unique, eclectic people.
Yeah. And it's funny like when you explain some of these things and sort of almost sometimes how isolated it is. It makes me think of like some places in Appalachia too, and I think there are some similarities there with people and how those conditions can affect them and create just really interesting stories.
I think I think part of it is when you're in environments like that, it breeds character. And
Yeah.
so what you end up with is a whole lot of weird characters.
Yeah.
Like we had Armas, Hermance, but you pronounce it Armas. She lived a few doors down. She was very French, but she spoke great English. Um, and she was a little touched, in that the things that she would say, like the AIDS virus came from lobsters, and then later it was caused by fluorescent lamps.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
She would be afraid
Uh-huh.
that mosquitoes would get inside her head, so she would roll up newspapers, dip them in wax, and then stick them in her ears. And she would ride down the road on her bicycle like this.
Just with newspapers, just
Yeah.
Wow.
But my grandmother, who was a character herself, she and my aunt Brenda would, I mean, they would go clubbing. The
Mhm.
island had a club in the center, so usually every weekend, they'd go out. I'd be home like reading by myself, and I was fine anyways. The neighbor would check in on me, and then they would come home at like 1 o'clock in the morning with fast food that they got from the local place. It was like eating clams at like 1 o'clock in the morning. But they would take our moss with them because she was always looking for the man that got away. Um, and one time they they convinced her that they were in a relationship together. my grandmother, my aunt,
Uh-huh.
and that they were going to ask her if she was interested in joining them just to mess with her. And so she got so angry, she started to get out of the moving car. And then eventually they had to convince her, that this was, they were just messing with her. But
So there were absolutely some characters.
Yeah.
So when you write and create characters, do any of these people ever influence traits that you create in these characters?
those people have a very special place in my head and heart.
Yeah.
Any of the people in our podcast are either facets of me or are people that I've known that maybe are overly exaggerated. And then other ones come from nowhere. Susie, for instance, is a character, the little girl Susie. She's perpetually frozen, 12-year-old girl who's ghoulified. And her possessed talking doll, Ella, came to me in the most ungodly nightmare dream that I had not too long after episode 2. I had a dream that I was walking down a road in Appalachia, like I was in 76, and I came across, I actually have it. I came across this little girl at a lemonade stand with the face of a corpse and this talking devil doll selling lemonade that was poisoned, killing people, robbing them, and then just kind of putting their body in the bushes and then going on to the next character. And that was such a striking visual. I thought, oh my god, that character has to exist. So she came from wherever stuff like that comes from. Other characters like Brian, who's another really popular character. Shout out to Mark, who's in chat here. Voiced by Dr. Mark Hausworth. That character came from someone that I knew when I was in Boy Scouts, who is like, I enjoyed the outdoors, but I didn't take it very seriously. And then you have someone who's like an overachieving, like Order of Arrow, Eagle Scout kind of type person who has a sash with every goddamn merit badge you've ever seen, including ones that shouldn't even exist, like animal husbandry or recreational wickery or whatever it is.
Right.
Like, and he would always be annoyingly upbeat and optimistic, like in 80 degrees when you're climbing a mountain and you're really just excited to get up to the top and take some pictures, and he's like singing like, let's go gang, this is great. Really, you just want to kill that person and leave them for dead. So he came from a real person that I knew, and then I just kind of exaggerated him. Other characters represent parts of me or my personality or things like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So a culmination of a lot of things there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, like hearing you tell stories about growing up in the in this island area, and kind of the impact of, like, obviously, how many people live in this island, Ken? About how many people do you
558
think? Right. The impact is very small, but the footprint that it makes seems to be like very, very large. And there's probably some sort of mystery surrounding the island in which the people that live there are like, no, it's not actually like that. But I mean, there's something kind of out there. There's a novelty aspect to it, and then there's like a weird reality to a lot of to that. Probably, am I kind of hitting close to that?
Yeah. I mean, some of these, you tell these stories and people are like, what? There's a place that's actually like that? Like, what the hell kind of upbringing did you have? It seems like at the time that you're living it, I mean, it seems perfectly normal, but removed from it, and then particularly when I come home, it's like a different world here. And then unfortunately, after my grandmother passed away, the house hadn't been taken great care of, partly because she couldn't really afford to do so, but the main beams went and the sills went. So the house is unsafe and unstable to be in.
Right.
So this summer I actually have to clean it out, tear it down, then eventually we're going to build something else there. But places like that are moments in time that once the elements change, the recipe is never the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember eventually a bridge was put in, and once the bridge was put in, you get a lot more people who aren't from the island building homes, or moving to the island just to live there, all of which changes the culture. And then another part of it is eventually over time, even modern things come to the island, which is the internet. So you get satellite TV and the internet, and the kind of present organic experiences of sitting around a wood stove telling stories of a world gone by where you couldn't imagine what it was like in the early part of the last century, living here, and telling these stories and passing these stories down. All of that changes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's all the more important. And that isn't just there; that's everywhere.
Yeah.
We've lost, or we're allowing ourselves to lose, the art of storytelling, and most importantly, chronicling storytelling. So stories of people and places and folklore. It's so important to capture that and to keep telling those stories, because they inevitably get lost and
Mm-hmm.
fade if they
Mhm.
aren't told.
I mean, that's a common thing that we battle with in Appalachia, where it's
Yeah.
a lot of these communities, a lot of these like old communities, just people are moving. They nobody sticks around. There's generally no business, but people stay there because they like their little slice of the town, and they like their little slice of the thing. But either those places tend to fall off, or they become more touristy and more open to, and kind of. But either way, there is kind of a loss. There's kind of a loss in that community,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. I mean, even last night, I was talking to a guy that had grown up in Charleston before it was a thing, and him talking about like little downtown stores and like the back corners of the room when people would come in and talk to them about their problems, or talk like this guy runs like a tailor store in town, like a very, like, you don't see a lot of tailors out perusing the streets of the malls of America. Like, you're pretty much getting the discount clothing stores. But the amount of history that comes with a lot of the places, I feel like that somehow, like, there's a little bit of loss, and I think part of it, it's up to our generation, not necessarily to continue that tradition, to be so traditionalized, but to carry kind of the stories of what things were, and what things occurred, and I think that's the magic of a generation that didn't grow up with TVs, or didn't grow up with a lot of media, is taking that in their storytelling prowess and their ability to engage community, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what are we going to do with that? It's like, what's our onus of that? Like, obviously we can't, as much as we would love to, we can't, sit around and hold up to the beams of these places and hold the stuff up. Like, things move on. Like, it becomes very hard to have, a house from the 1800s or 1700s, because then it's like, well, the foundation of this house is broken, or there's, something wrong. Like, that whole setup is gone. But I think it's really left up to us and a new generation of people to come in and say, okay, these are the stories that we want to keep, because that's, I think, the important thing. It's funny when you're talking about this stuff, and it's like talking about what was it, Goo Goo, and that's a silly sounding name, but I mean that's probably something very personal to a lot of people. Like that's like a cherished memory
Mm-hmm.
of this, you know, of this creature and these, you know, the rituals and everything.
Yeah, I mean, and part of it lends itself organically to the imagination and experience and joy of childhood,
Mm-hmm.
where you're kind of, you live in a state, you feel like these things are very real, and yet you dance into that darkness and you purposely go looking for them. um like there was L'Île au Trésor is, it was a little spit of an island right at the end of our peninsula that was
These
separated.
these French Canadian people coming in here trying to get us to pronounce everything correctly. Look at these people.
And it was a Micmac Indian summer colony. Not by the time that I was there, but when my great grandmother, when she was younger, she would remember the Micmac Indians coming to the island for the summer, and they would set up, tents and everything on the island, fish and everything, and then they'd head back to the southwest for the winter. Um, but there was always a story that Billy the Kid had come to the island and had buried pirate treasure on there. And that story had been told for over 150 years, passed down, um, that there was treasure somewhere on the island. And a little bit, a little bit like, God, what's the name of the island off the coast of in Nova Scotia? Um, God, it's the most famous buried treasure island. I can't even think of it now.
The funniest part about this is I was looking at a map of Nova Scotia this morning. Don't ask me why.
That's out there.
God, I don't remember what it is now.
Mm.
But anyway, so we kids, we would get our shovels in the summer, and then we would swim over to the island with shovels in hand, and then we'd poke around through there and dig. And a few times we found arrowheads or like little artifacts. Even by the time I was little, you could still see the circular impressions where they would always set up the tents where the peat moss was kind of placed down.
Hmm.
Huh.
So you go looking for these places. Of course, we never found treasure, but
So there's all these stories, you know, and all of this, you know, culture that impacted your life early on. Later on, did you, like, outside of obviously like storytelling in the podcast, but even before that, had you looked into any of this stuff? Had this been of interest to you?
storytelling or just
No, these like
podcast as
weird.
a whole.
I mean, I guess the stories in general, but like, I think you had mentioned you were doing some things with kind of not necessarily. I guess the kind of weird, outlandish things in your 20s, right? With some exploring
Yeah,
that you were doing.
I mean, even when in our teenage years, we got into urban exploration. Like even in Newburyport, there was, right down the street from where I grew up in Massachusetts, it was Maudsley State Park, which in and of itself has was a really terrifying urban legend around it about the Hell's Gates. But it was this massive estate, that the mansions had been torn down, I think in the 70s, that were on there, but you were left with this beautiful state park
Mm-hmm.
with trails, and wells and these almost, these creepy hedge mazes to get lost in. The place was just awesome. So, I mean, we would sneak out at night and go down there and scare the crap out of ourselves, just kind of wandering through this creepy place. Um, but starting there, because some of the outbuildings, the barns, the keeper's cottage, were still there, even though the mansions weren't. So we would kind of wander through those places and take pictures. We never destroyed anything. It was
Right.
more about, I don't know what it was, but I've always found places like that where, removed from people, they very quickly lose the life that keeps them suspended in time, where they go from a state where this is a home to something that is just a house. And once it's a house, entropy takes hold and windows start to crack and roofs start to leak. and vegetation returns. And there's such a beautiful melancholy to those places where you walk into them and they have a very particular energy still, where they feel the weight of years, and you can almost feel that moving through them, where you feel like you just miss people, where people were laughing or crying and finding love and confronting death and all of these things. um, I've always been really drawn to places like that. So even later on in my 20s, we started actively doing that. Like I spent many an illegal evening breaking into the Danvers State Asylum, which is an amazing place that unfortunately isn't what it, well, fortunately or unfortunately isn't what it was, because it's now the majority of the buildings were demolished and now it's like condos for Boston power brokers. But
Those power brokers are probably having really terrible sleeps. I'm just,
yeah,
I've got to think that. Yeah.
I do have a great story about that place though.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So if you ever check into this, there is still some stuff on YouTube. Um, Back then, getting into the place, there were the place is connected to the sewer systems, and Reaganomics, when the place was shut down in the 80s, I think it was 85 or 86. Um, they literally just took the patients, put them on buses. Some of the more severely and violent ones were transferred to other facilities, but majority of them were just put on buses, dropped into homeless shelters, and eventually some of those people who'd only ever known this place as home came back to Danvers and were living in rooms and underneath.
Mm.
It was a Kirkbride complex, which Dr. I believe it's Thomas Kirkbride or Samuel Kirkbride is his first name, but his concept was revolutionary for the time at a period where mentally ill were really tortured. And these are people, it would be women suffering from anxiety or depression that would be checked into these places as being mentally unfit. And the stories from that period of time are very sad. But Kirkbride believed that if you put people in a place and surrounded them with air and light and nature, that it would be a good thing. And it was, until the system became so filled that there wasn't room for light and sun. The places became overcrowded, including Danvers. So they would move patients from building to building in these massive tunnels underneath the place. And it was in those tunnels that if you access from the sewer system, you could kind of get into from there. Um, and one time, Dunkin' Donuts coffees in hand, we were moving through the tunnels underneath one of the complexes and came around a corner. And this is the closest I have ever been to losing control of my bowels in any scary situation I've ever been in. Because there was literally a wheelchair in the middle of this tunnel and a person in a white gown or a shirt sitting there. There's a woman with long, scraggly ass hair facing away from us. So I saw that, stopped, could literally feel my bladder about to retrieve itself. And she slowly turned around and looked at us. And we slowly backpedaled and got the hell out of there. It wasn't a ghost, it was an actual person. But a lot of the homeless people that were living in the buildings and underneath the tunnels there were kind of the sad after effect of people that had only lived in Danvers, who were kind of tossed out into the surrounding towns and found their way home. But
yeah, that would be terrifying to see, though.
That would be absolutely terrifying.
That was an oh hell no moment.
It's like one of those moments where like you almost would have welcomed the ghost a little bit more if it was not a real person. Like that's like just seeing a real person in that situation. It's right. Very unsettling.
Because there's a barrier between you and ghosts. Like there's a
yeah.
I feel like there's some sort of barrier there, that there's like a there's a social contract when you go into a meeting with a ghost. That it's like you're gonna come and do some like things in the corner of my eye, but
Hey, if you want to blow on my neck or make my hairs
right.
rise or whatever you want to do, you do
Yeah.
that. But if you're gonna sit in this creepy ass tunnel and then maybe come at me with a rusty hypodermic needle, I'm gonna have to say no. That's gonna
Yeah.
be a hard no for me.
Yeah. Gosh.
It's gonna be a hard no.
Well, I think I've had about enough of this, because if we keep on going, it's gonna be. I mean, I'm just never gonna want to go to New England. It's gonna be too
I do
scary.
have to say though that Austin's scary ass story that we did for the Robots Radio Network crossover was just about the most terrifying goddamn story I have ever heard. Like when I was editing it, it was late at night. You know, it's October for fuck's sake. So I'm sitting here in the dark, editing, and as it goes on, I'm like, okay, I start turning on the lights.
Yeah.
Like,
I
what?
if you would have been there when we recorded that, though, it wouldn't have been as scary, because we were just in that room Dave's in, and it was like super bright, and we're just like sitting there, and I was like, all right, I've got to remember this story. And it was like super casual, but then like when I listened back to it, I was like, damn, this shit sounds scary.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, this sounds, and I think it's just I've told it so many times now that it doesn't freak me out anymore.
Right.
But like your stories just now, like I've been sitting here like, ugh, like it's just got me. I had chills. But the way that you explain things is so like beautifully said. I feel like you should. It's almost like you're a writer. And
You should have an audio podcast, like
Yeah.
where you're writing stuff.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay. All right. Well, we like to end this show with a little segment where we talk about what we are excited for. Just a little tidbit of things that we're excited for in the coming future. It doesn't have to be this week. Doesn't have to be next week. Could be this year. Who knows? And I am going to begin this segment because I had a brilliant idea. Came to me in my sleep last night. I had some weird dreams, but I woke up. My weird dream was that I was a TikTok producer for Mark Hamill. And at one point, he had a tennis ball that he lit on fire, and he was like, guys, watch this. And he caught it in his mouth. And I was trying to think of what music to set behind that, because that's what you do on TikTok. And I came up with Pitbull's Fireball, like the hip hop song that he sings, right? Is that Pitbull that does that Fireball, you know?
I think it is.
And I came up with that, but then I accidentally backed out of the video, and I couldn't do it because all that footage deleted, and we didn't want to set another tennis ball on fire. Anyways, that's entirely irrelevant. I woke up from the dream and I had an idea. I have missed Halloween. I have missed Halloween a great deal. Last year we didn't do anything for Halloween for obvious reasons, and I've gotten into woodworking since the, I guess, pandemic had kind of started. So I've converted a room in my basement to kind of be like woodworking. I'm working on putting all of my mead stuff down there and doing everything down there. But I was thinking, I want to build some Halloween decorations. I want to do like get a piece of plywood, cut it in the shape of Mothman, and like stick it up on my porch so that it's like peering out the porch, like be able to paint it, get in there, get like a projector and paint that stuff. And I'm already excited thinking about it. That has me excited. I'm like, I want to do that today. I want to start Halloween prep today.
I love this joy. I love the energy and the joy that.
I'm so excited. And I'm like, if I do Mothman, I got to put up Flatwoods Monster. And I'm thinking, I'd be the coolest house in the neighborhood. And eventually, I feel like this is going to like keep on like churning in my head. And I'm going to have a house that's like, it's a small world for cryptids. So it's going to be like little cryptids popping up.
There's a house in Beckley, or a neighborhood in Beckley, actually, that I just recently saw. And one of my friends went there, and all of the houses on this block, I think it was like 7 or 8 houses, they all have like dinosaurs and creatures and things like littered throughout the yards and on their roof. Like it was everywhere. You need to start that, but with cryptids on your street.
Yes. That's what I'm gonna try to do. I'm gonna try to have that for Halloween. I have some roof space as well, so it might be fun to put something on the roof. But I'm curious what
you can use your grapple hook.
It's early enough that you can go on Fiverr and have like your own custom theme song, just kind of playing spoopy on the radio, like what you gonna do when the cryptids on your street?
Yeah, I like that.
What you gonna do when the cryptids in your feet?
Sounds like he's already got it ready for you, Dave. You don't
Yeah,
need
I know. I don't need. Yeah, you got it. I'm just gonna lay down that track. I mean, I'm just gonna copy that and then put that on the FMA and broadcaster and call it a day. You know. Oh well, that's what I'm excited for. What about you, Austin? What are you excited for?
I am excited. Actually, right before the show a little bit ago, I found out that one of my favorite breweries, which is in Asheville, North Carolina, is opening a spot in Charlotte, which I frequent Charlotte a lot more than Asheville. And I'm excited for that because I feel like that can be my little, that'll be like just a treat, you know?
What's the name?
I don't have to go to Asheville. It's Burial Beer is the name. It's Burial. I think it's just called Burial, but on Instagram, it's like Burial Beer, hashtag not an ad, but they are great. And you should check, especially if you're in North Carolina. I think they've got a place in Raleigh and Asheville and then in Charlotte, but I just found out that they ship to Kentucky and my parents live in Kentucky. So I'm about to use them as like a proxy. I'm going to try to get that like a monthly shipment there.
Yeah.
But I'm pumped for that. I'm like, look at that. It's going to be right there near some of my friends in Charlotte. So once I get this second vaccination, I might have to make a trip down.
I've already booked. I booked my vacation this past week for. I have my second vaccination on the calendar, and I have my vacation already planned. I'm so excited, ready.
But that is what I'm excited about. Ken, what are you excited about?
I'm excited for vaccinations.
I
feel that.
Hey, come to West Virginia now.
I'm ready.
We're the second state in the United States to have it completely open. From 16 to however long, you can book a vaccination appointment and get one. I think the first state was Alaska, which makes sense. First state was Alaska to do that.
We've been very lucky here, I think. I'm gonna close these blinds. Keep talking.
No, you're fine. You just look like you're gonna like steal my burger from some, McDonald's ad of some sort.
It's fine. If you flip this to back in black and white, it looks like you're in kind of a noir jailhouse movie.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I started seeing the lines. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is getting bad.
Austin in prison.
No, I hope that other states. It seems very strange from how this is all rolling out, but I understand. It was like 1 week I thought I was maybe like 2 months out from it, and that it was like I got a call and it was like, let's go get a vaccination, and now it's like everybody. Yeah. It's a free for all. So.
Did you feel like Thanos I felt like Thanos when he put on the gauntlet? As soon as it hit my bloodstream, I was just like, I just could feel it. But then they've told me, they were like, the second one's gonna kick your ass. Like, you're gonna be down for the count. So I'm just like ready for that. But I don't know. I think that's a good thing to be excited about because what a weird ass year it's been.
Yeah.
Yes. It has been a very, very strange year. The good news about the vaccinations, though, and I mean the main point of getting it now is now Krispy Kreme. They'll give you a free donut.
Saw that.
Every day you come in if you've been
really,
vaccinated.
that's why I want to be vaccinated.
Right. It's like the evolution of the Book It Club.
I need that sweet, warm donut in my belly.
I think the closest Krispy Kreme for me is Charleston. So
yeah. Well, I mean, you have Jolly Pirate up there, so, and we all know that how great Jolly Pirate is. Ken, let me tell you something. If you see a restaurant that says, "Hey, we're gonna make donuts and gyros," and that's like we're gonna do Mediterranean food and donuts, do you trust the donut to be a quality donut? Like, just from that information alone.
Donut. It's very quality.
I wouldn't immediately think, from my donut experience, I need to go to a Mediterranean restaurant.
Listen, though.
That wouldn't immediately come to mind, but hey,
if they didn't do it, that was going to be next week's $1 million idea. They already took it, so I'm just saying.
Well, and then they named it Jolly Pirate. Like, what is the branding here? You need to sit down and be like.
They're from Greece. The family is from Greece.
Right.
Very fine people. I know them. They're great people.
Great. Yeah.
And they make great donuts. And they just happen to, like, they make the donuts fresh. Like, they're so good. And the gyros just happen to also be good. So it's like, why not have both?
Yeah.
More profit.
But why are they pirates?
Well, I will say, so the one in Ashland, Kentucky, which is where I used to live across the state border, they didn't sell gyros. It's strictly donuts. So you just need to go there since you have some qualms with the gyros and
I need to go to the like a Jolly Pirate donut. That sounds delightful.
It's so good. It's delicious. But the Krispy Kreme vaccination thing, I think I saw that and I was like, oh, our vaccine numbers are about to go through the roof.
I think it's both amazing and sad in equal parts. Like
Yeah.
How American is it with a global pandemic, with the thing that's going to get you to get off your ass and go out and take care of yourself, not for you, but for your family and everyone you come into contact with, is a donut. What the hell?
It's quite American.
That's a very American thing.
I mean, it's a deal. Like, I mean, let's think about it. Let's think about it from like a breakfast. Like, that's a lot of caloric intake. So let's say, I mean, you go every day for breakfast and get a free donut and some water. I mean, you've got the sugar content to like go like, fight a kangaroo. I don't know. How many calories are in a Krispy Kreme glazed donut? Probably like what, 1,000, 1,200? Like, you're
in
set.
one donut? I hope not.
I feel like those girls who used to sing the Double Mint commercial, the Double Mint gum commercial, would probably make a comeback, getting people like, if you want a vaccination, it's time for Krispy Kreme donut. And they just have happy people like biting into it, like in the Mentos commercial for some reason, like biting into it, giving each other thumbs up, and then like running a marathon, sitting in a restaurant. There's like a girl on a bike smiling at the beach. All of those little things.
I feel like they should go one step ahead, and Krispy Kreme should set up at vaccination sites. And when you get the vaccine, you can have a donut as you're getting it to kind of start the process.
Why not have intravenous on one side, you're getting the vaccination, and then you've got the Krispy Kreme filling that's getting piped right into you on the opposite side.
Yeah.
Just straight two-line it, go straight right for it.
Or like use the donut as like a targeting device to be like, all right, we're gonna shut the shot right here, and then when we're done, I'm gonna leave the donut. It's gonna be a pleasant surprise.
Right.
Well, I think we've got a lot covered today. Covered and glazed. I think we've just glazed this whole podcast. This whole podcast is glazed. If you want to listen to Vault Boys, we are live every Tuesday at 5 p.m. and you can get us on all different podcast services. We're on iTunes, Spotify, all that stuff. You can give us a review on iTunes for 5 stars. If you give us a 5-star review, we really appreciate that. We can, I don't think we've shouted out people in a while, but we should do that again. That would be fun. I just like making up rules in the go. This is my planning meeting. Now you're in the planning portion. So like, we're going to workshop ideas. So like, this is where we start talking about making the grappling hook. If you want to follow us on Twitch, that would be great. We're trying to get some more followers on there. So if you listen in your car or you are just, a podcast listener on your device, give us a little follow on Twitch. You may not ever watch us live, but it's always good to have that option. Now, I will hand the floor over to Kenneth Vigue. Kenneth Vigue, tell me what you've got going on in your life.
Well, right now we're finishing the final part of The Sickle Man is Here part that was going to just be like a 2-hour story, and I kind of turned it into like a 5-hour marathon that we had to split into multiple parts. So we're in the middle of editing that. That'll drop, and then 84 years later, the Cryptid Creeps episode, guest starring Dave Chaffins, will be plugging itself right into your ear holes. That episode is going to be a lot of fun. It will find Simon, desperate for caps, finding a very strange poster in the train station, and then going to work as an intern for Cryptid Creeps Incorporated. They are going to be drinking a lot of moonshine and hunting cryptids. It's going to go about as well as you would think.
That sounds great. So where can we catch this podcast? Where is it at?
At follow76podcast.com, you can find links to, at this point, every podcasting service, however you like to listen to shows, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, Samsung Smart Fridge. If you wherever you like to digest your audio content, we're there.
What about Zune? You got Zune yet? You got anything on Zune?
That's confidential.
Okay. That's good to know. Got the, but backdoor. Now that Microsoft's bought Bethesda, Bethesda's bringing their own Zune out.
The circle is complete.
Finally. Austin, what about you, buddy?
Me, I don't really have a whole lot going on right now. Just I'm ready for spring, things to bloom, so I can get out and get some photos and do some hiking and just get out of my apartment a little more.
Yeah, you gotta come visit me.
Yeah, that's the thing. Once I get that second vax next week, I'll feel more comfortable. And in West Virginia, especially taking photos without things blooming, there's not a lot for me to work with right now that I haven't already taken. You know what I mean? So I'm ready for spring. I'm ready for things to start blooming.
Mud season is just depressing.
Yeah, it's just, it's rough. But that's really what I've got going on.
Yeah, get shorts on, skies out, thighs out.
Yeah, seasonal depression just out the window. Regular depression right back in. Just balancing that out.
Right. It's like going from you're going on the diet and you're taking the Coca-Cola away and you're just putting the Diet Coke right there. I mean, that's all. Yeah. It's all part of that.
Exactly.
The stuff I've got going on. I obviously doing this podcast, but I also do another podcast called The Fallout Hub. It has two other hosts, one being Tom, who does the Fallout Lore Class, another one being Kenneth Vigue, who does Chad and Fallout 76 podcast. You may know him.
Son of a stole my idea.
You may know him. He tends to be sometimes near me in some form or fashion. But that's every other Tuesday at 5. We do that live, and then that goes out in podcast services. And outside of that, that's it. Other than I'm like ready to cut some plywood and make some Mothman, I'm ready.
Get that grappling hook ready. We have work to do.
Gotta get the butt bank. The Mothman butt bank.
Oh, man.
Oh. It's not going to stuff itself.
Well, let me tell you what a butt bank is definitely something that will have you covered from holler to highway 6 ways to Sunday.